As everyone bowed for grace at the Caldwell dinner, my stepmother's hand struck my wrist under the table. She was still whispering, "Amen." A fork clattered. Grandpa looked straight at me and said, "That's enough." No one knew I had brought the evidence, just waiting for that cue to turn this dining table into a courtroom. When the security camera's tiny red light blinked, their prayer suddenly sounded like a confession. "My name is Zuri Powell. I am 34 years old, and I was, until this afternoon, the most promising lead project manager at Rook Haven Design Lab." My voice was a calibrated instrument of confidence. As you can see from the projections for Phase 3, the integration of the sustainable composites will not only meet LEED certification, but will reduce long-term maintenance overhead by nearly 20%. The air in the glass-walled conference room was perfectly still. The clients, a silent trio representing the Atherton Hotel Group's new multi-million-dollar coastal expansion, nodded in unison. I had them. The presentation was flawless. The air crackled with that perfect, pre-signature silence. Then, my phone, face down on the polished mahogany, began to vibrate. It was not a single, polite buzz. It was a swarm, a frantic, desperate, insistent pulse against the wood that was loud enough to break the spell. I ignored it. My professional mask, the one I had spent a decade forging, was cemented in place. If you'll turn your attention to the budget annex, you'll note the adjusted figures for Zzz. The lead client, a man named Harrison, glanced at the vibrating black rectangle, then at me. His expression was unreadable, but his focus was broken. Professional courtesy dictates silence. Family, however, operates on its own chaotic frequency. "Excuse me," I said. The smile I offered felt like hardening plastic, cracking at the edges. "Just one moment. I apologize." I picked it up. The screen was a nightmare. A blinding white cascade of notifications from the Caldwell family chat. 27 new messages in under a minute. I saw only snippets, flashes of text that felt like digital slaps. "Sienna, we simply cannot keep letting her toxicity ruin this family." Vivian, "It's done. We are drawing a line, for our own mental health and safety." Uncle Mark, "She needs to learn her place. It's about time." And then, the notification that turned my blood to ice, a stark, gray line of system text that stole the air from my lungs. Zuri Powell was removed from Caldwell family chat. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was not a metaphor. It was a physical sensation. A cold, dizzying vacuum pulling from my cheeks down into the pit of my stomach, leaving my skin clammy. "Ms. Powell?" Harrison asked. I looked up. The words on my presentation screen, synergy, integration, projection, seemed blurry, nonsensical, like a language I no longer spoke. The 20% savings, the LEED certification, it all felt utterly ridiculous. "My apologies," I managed, my voice sounding distant, thin. A sudden family emergency." The mask was not just slipping, it had shattered. I could feel the tremor in my hand as I placed the phone back down. Harrison frowned. He wasn't an unkind man, but he was a businessman managing a 9-figure account. His patience did not extend to project managers who unraveled mid-pitch. "Perhaps," he said, the finality in his tone unmistakable as he closed his leather portfolio, "we should reschedule, when you have your full attention." It was not a question, it was a dismissal. My boss, who had been sitting in the corner basking in the reflected glory, shot me a look of pure, unadulterated acid. As they filed out of the room, the clients and my boss, the silence they left behind was louder and more violent than the buzzing had been. My career, the fortress I had meticulously built stone by stone to protect myself from the Caldwell chaos, had just developed a significant, load-bearing crack. I sat there for 10 full minutes, staring at the blank presentation screen. Removed. I grabbed my keys, bypassing my boss's office. I couldn't face the "what the hell was that" conversation. Not yet. I got into my car, the black leather seats already hot and sticky from the North Carolina sun. I didn't drive back to my quiet, sterile apartment. I drove toward them, toward the family home in Asheville, the one my mother and father had lived in, the one my stepmother, Vivian, now ruled as her personal kingdom. My hands were shaking so hard on the steering wheel that I had to grip it until my knuckles went white. Toxic. The word echoed. They had used it for years. A quiet branding iron. Zuri is sensitive. Zuri is difficult. Zuri is toxic. It was the perfect weapon. It's the word abusers use when their victims finally start setting boundaries. My sickness rose, and I pulled up Instagram. I needed to see, of course, Vivian had just posted less than an hour ago. A picture, her, my father, looking passive and weak, as usual, and Sienna, my half-sister. They were clinking oversized wine glasses on the wide front porch. The lighting was perfect. They looked happy. The caption, "Finally at peace with my real family. Sometimes you have to cut out the poison to heal. We are so blessed. Family first, no more drama." Poison. I was the poison. Sienna had posted, too, naturally, a selfie, pouting into the camera, her hair perfectly highlighted. Some people just don't understand boundaries. So glad my mom is strong enough to protect our peace. The comments were a sickening flood of sympathy. "Stay strong. Vivian, you did the right thing. We support you." Toxicity has no place in a real family. A strangled noise, half laugh, half sob, ripped from my throat. Boundaries? I had respected their boundaries. I had respected their endless, bottomless, suffocating need. I had respected their emergency just 3 days ago. My stomach churned, a nauseating mix of betrayal and stupidity. The emergency money. This was the 3rd time this month. The 3rd. The text from Vivian was still fresh in my memory. A masterpiece of manipulation. "Zuri, honey, I hate to ask this. I really do. The property taxes were higher than we thought, and Harlan's, Grandpa's supplemental care isn't cheap. You know, we're just drowning over here. Just $2,000 to tide us over. I promise it's the last time." I had sent it, instantly, without a question, because that's what I did. I was Zuri, the reliable one, the successful one, the responsible one. I was the fixer. I was the one who paid, in every sense of the word, for my seat at the table. Toxicity. They were calling me toxic. I was on their street now, the one I grew up on. I parked across the road, under the deep shade of an old oak tree my real mother had planted 2 decades ago. The house looked exactly as it always did. Warm, inviting, the white paint pristine. The windows glowed with that perfect golden light that lifestyle magazines try to replicate. It looked like the home of a loving family. And then I heard it, drifting through the open window on the humid evening air. Laughter. Not just a polite chuckle, a full, rolling belly laugh. It was Sienna's high-pitched, unmistakable shriek, followed by Vivian's deeper, throaty cackle. They were in there, celebrating. They had just performed a digital execution, a severing of family ties, and they were celebrating. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was financing the party I wasn't invited to. I sat in the dark car, the engine ticking as it cooled. I felt hollowed out. The polished, professional woman from the conference room felt like a different person, a costume I had shed on the floor of my office. This was me, the 34-year-old orphan, parked across the street from her own family home, listening to them laugh about banishing her. A different kind of energy began to replace the hollow. Cold grief. It was quiet. It was focused. It was the anger of the profoundly wronged. I pulled out my phone, the same device that had delivered the execution notice. I didn't open Instagram. I didn't open the family chat I no longer had access to. I opened my banking app. My finger hovered over the transfer history. I had always been afraid to look. afraid to pull that thread, afraid to confirm the suspicion I had been swallowing for years. No more. I pulled my laptop from my briefcase, set it on the passenger seat, and tethered it to my phone's hotspot. I opened a new, blank Excel sheet. I titled the file, Caldwell Cash Flow Private. I started scrolling. I went back 14 months, to when Sienna had lost her job at the boutique and Vivian had taken over managing Grandpa Harlan's transition to the Pinecrest Haven retirement facility. My hands were steady now. The project manager had taken over. Transfer, $2,000. Date, 3 days ago. Note, emergency taxes, Harlan. I switched browser tabs. Opening Instagram. I went to Sienna's feed. 3 days ago, a picture of her and 2 friends at the Grove Park Inn Spa. Tagged. A much-needed mental health day. Self-care blessed. She was holding a champagne flute. The bill for that kind of day, I knew, was astronomical. My breath hitched. I went back to the bank app. Transfer, $5,000. Date, 6 weeks ago. Note, emergency roof repair. I checked Sienna's feed. 6 weeks ago. A video. She was walking down a street in Charlotte, spinning in a new coat and a new bag, a very specific, very recognizable Celine box bag, I knew, because I had wanted one myself for a year, but had told myself I couldn't afford it. It retailed for just under $5,000, exactly. Transfer, $800. Date, 7 weeks ago. Note, Grandpa Medical Copay. Sienna's feed, 7 weeks ago. Festival vibes, with a group of friends. VIP wristbands for a 3-day music festival. It went on, and on, and on. Plumber emergency, new tires for Dad's truck, overdue utility bill, emergency dental surgery. Each transfer, each desperate, breathless plea from Vivian, lined up almost perfectly with a luxury purchase, a weekend trip, a high-end dinner, or a spa day for Sienna. They weren't even trying to hide it. They just assumed I would never look. They assumed I was too desperate for their approval, or too stupid, to connect the dots. I typed every single date, every single amount, every single false reason. The data was clear. The hypothesis was proven. My cursor hovered over the final cell. I hit the sum function. The total stared back at me from the laptop screen, glowing in the dark car. $39,800 in 14 months. The laughter from the house suddenly sounded tinny and sharp, like glass breaking. I am financing my own downfall, I whispered to the empty car. I had paid for the knives they were using to stab me in the back. I paid for the wine they were drinking to toast my removal. I paid for the cashmere sweater Sienna wore while she typed about my boundaries. The grief I had felt just moments before solidified. It didn't disappear. It hardened. It changed state. From a liquid pain into something solid, something structural, something I could build with. Rage is a powerful motivator. I looked at my phone. The screen was dark, but I knew what was coming next. Now that I was removed, the flying monkeys would start. The aunts, the cousins, the "Are you okay, honey?" texts that really meant, "What did you do to deserve this?" The concerned calls that were really just reconnaissance missions for Vivian. I swiped down on my screen. I pressed the small crescent moon icon. Do not disturb. On. It was the first counter-move. The first shot fired in a war I had just realized I was already losing. I put the car in drive. I did not look back at the golden windows. I was halfway back to my apartment, driving through the quiet streets, when the screen lit up, bypassing the do not disturb, a favorite contact, Grandpa Harlan. My heart leaped into my throat. He was the only one, the only part of that family. Aside from the fading memory of my mother, that felt like true north. I reached for the phone, my thumb fumbling for the answer icon. But I was too slow. It went to voicemail. Missed call. Grandpa Harlan. A new kind of pit opened in my stomach. Cold and sharp. Why was he calling me now? Tonight. Just as they had exiled me. He never called this late. The nurses at Pinecrest were strict about phone usage after 8. He was trying to tell me something. He was trying to reach me, and I missed it. I immediately tried to call back. The phone rang, then clicked. Pinecrest Haven. This is the night supervisor. I need to speak to Harlan Caldwell. Please, it's urgent. I'm sorry, ma'am. Our residents are settled for the evening. No calls are put through after 9 p.m. You can try again in the morning. This is his granddaughter, Zuri. He just called me. Please, just check on him. He's fine, ma'am. He's in his room. Good night. The line went dead. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white again. The spreadsheet was open on the passenger seat. The missed call notification glowed on my dashboard. They had isolated me, but the missed call meant he knew. He knew something was wrong. They are not getting away with this, I said. My voice was quiet. It was steady. The mask was gone. This was Zuri Powell, and I was done paying. I was ready to collect. I walked into my apartment and the silence was absolute. My phone, still set to Do Not Disturb, was a dark, silent rectangle on the kitchen counter. It was 9:30 at night. I made coffee, black. Sleep was an irrelevant luxury. I needed to think. I needed to act. The missed call from Grandpa Harlan was a siren. The spreadsheet was the map of the battlefield. But I was missing the enemy's communications. I needed to see inside their operation. Then I remembered the old tablet. It was an iPad, generations out of date. Sitting in my office desk drawer, I had lent it to Vivian about 8 months ago when her personal laptop suddenly died. It was another emergency, another frantic call, another $500 wired from my account to hers for a critical repair. I ended up just buying her a new MacBook for her birthday 2 months later, hoping the gesture would buy me some goodwill. She had returned the old tablet, complaining it was painfully slow and tossing it onto my coffee table. I had never wiped it. I retrieved it from the drawer, plugged it in, and waited. The screen flickered to life, sluggish and dim, and then, there it was. The cluster of social media apps, Facebook. The little blue icon had a red notification badge in the corner, 99 plus. And smiling back at me from the tiny profile bubble was Vivian. She was still logged in. My heart began to hammer a heavy, painful rhythm against my ribs. This felt illicit. This was a violation of privacy. But the Caldwell family chat notification flashed in my mind. Zuri Powell was removed. They had already broken the treaty. They had bulldozed the embassy. This was not a breach of trust. This was reconnaissance in a war they had already declared. I was just sifting through the wreckage they had made of my life. I pressed the messenger icon. The sheer volume of inane chatter was overwhelming. Gossip with her sisters, links to online sales, complaints about my father's passivity, but pinned right at the very top, the first conversation in the list, was the thread between her and Sienna. I opened it. The most recent messages, from just hours ago, were glowing with triumph. Sienna, did you do it yet? Vivian, it is done. The toxic bitch is officially gone. Cut out like the cancer she is. Sienna, OMG, Mom. Yes, finally. She won't be able to poison Grandpa against us anymore. My breath caught in my throat. Poison Grandpa against them, not the other way around. The narrative was already set, polished, and deployed. In their story, I was the aggressor. They were the victims, protecting their peace. I started scrolling up. My fingers flew, the screen blurring. I scrolled past weeks, then months. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold. The architecture of their conspiracy, the systematic plan to dislodge me, built itself in front of my eyes, message by message. Vivian, we absolutely have to keep her away from Harlan. He's getting sentimental in his old age. If she gets to him alone, she'll undo everything we've worked for. Sienna, just tell the front desk she's not allowed. Ban her. Vivian, it is not that simple. She's still technically family, and she knows the lawyers. We have to manage the optics. This has to look like it's for his own good. That's where Ames comes in. Ames. The name appeared again and again. Director Ames. Director Ames. Pinecrest Haven. Vivian. Ames agrees. For a price. He said he can limit her visitation to supervised 30-minute blocks. We just have to submit a formal letter saying she causes Harlan emotional distress. Sienna. She does cause him distress. She always brings up Mom 1.0. My mother. It's so awkward. Vivian. Exactly. Ames is handling the paperwork. He's a godsend. I kept scrolling. A cold, chemical sickness rising from my stomach. I saw messages lining up with my bank transfers. The spreadsheet I had just made was not just a record of theft. It was a log of their plot points. Sienna. He's asking for the next donation installment. Says the new memory care wing isn't going to fund itself. He's getting greedy. Vivian. I'll get it from Zuri. I'll tell her Harlan needs a new specialized wheelchair. She'll pay. She always pays. She's so desperate to be a good granddaughter. My stomach twisted violently. I had paid for a wheelchair, $1,200, just last month. I scrolled faster, chasing the timeline back. Then I saw it. A message from 2 weeks ago that stopped my breathing. Vivian. We have to move fast. Baird and Colton are asking questions about the trust disbursements. We need to handle Harlan's file before the girl smells it. Before the girl smells it. The girl, that was me. The file, that was my grandfather's life, his will, his legacy. They were talking about him like a hostile takeover, a piece of real estate to be flipped. My eyes were burning from staring at the screen in the dark apartment. I was scrolling so fast my thumb ached. And then, a different notification popped up at the very top of the tablet's screen. It wasn't in the chat. It was a Facebook memory notification. A post from a distant cousin. Margaret. Harlan just heard the sad news. Prayers to the Caldwells. Time stopped. The message, the missed call, the phone call to the nurse. He's fine, ma'am. He's in his room. Was she lying? My heart exploded into a frantic, panicked rhythm. No, 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 I whispered, the words choking me. I scrambled for my own phone, my fingers slipping on the glass, my mind screaming to call 911, to call the facility, to call the police. And as I looked back at the tablet, the notification was gone. Vanished. I clicked the cousin's profile. Nothing. No post. It was gone. Deleted. It was a feint, a manipulation, or maybe a test? Had they floated a rumor to see who would react? To smoke me out? He was alive. The nurse had said he was fine. He had to be. But they were testing the waters. They were practicing his death. I forced myself to breathe. In, out. I was a project manager. I dealt in data, not panic. I forced myself back to the tablet. I had to be methodical. I opened my laptop next to the tablet. I pulled up Sienna's Instagram feed and cross-referenced it with the chat logs. The $39,800. My spreadsheet was just the balance sheet. This was the story. Sienna. A private photo, sent only to Vivian, of her holding the Celine bag. He's the best. Took me shopping. The timestamp matched Vivian's message to me. Emergency roof repair. $5,000. Sienna wasn't posting these publicly. She was sending them directly to Vivian. They were laughing at me. Together. The spa day, the music festival, it was all there. But the most damning discovery was a photo I hadn't seen. It was Sienna at Pinecrest Haven, smiling brightly, handing my grandfather a box of cheap-looking cookies. Sienna, to Vivian. Got the visit pic. He kept asking where Zuri was. It was so annoying. I told him you were probably just busy with your big new project. Vivian. Perfect. Send that to me. I'll use it for the donation appeal. My blood ran cold. Donation appeal? I switched from Messenger to the tablet's email app. Vivian's account was logged in there. 2. I searched Pinecrest. I found the receipt. It was from Pinecrest Haven. A generous charitable donation for $10,000. The date? The day after I had transferred $15,000 for what Vivian had called Harlan's emergency specialist surgery. But it wasn't the receipt itself that made my world tilt. It was the memo line at the bottom, clearly visible on the PDF. Memo. Per agreement with Director Ames, payment routing via V, Caldwell Private Ec. It was a kickback. It was a bribe. It was money laundering. I wasn't paying for my grandfather's care. I was paying Director Ames to help Vivian and Sienna isolate my grandfather. I was paying for the pen they were using to sign me out of his life. I stood up. I walked on steady legs to my desk. I pulled out a new, encrypted USB stick and an external solid-state drive. The grieving granddaughter was gone. The project manager was in control. This was document retention. I downloaded every conversation. I exported every email thread. I screenshotted every single message between Vivian and Sienna, every post, every photo. I saved the donation receipt as a high-resolution PDF. I saved the email chain with Director Ames. I saved one copy to the USB. I saved a second copy to the hard drive. I uploaded a third, encrypted copy to my private, secure cloud server. Then, I went back to the tablet. I logged Vivian out of every account: Facebook, Messenger, email, Instagram. Then I went to the settings and performed a full factory reset, wiping the device clean. The bridge was burned. The evidence was secured. It was almost midnight, but I didn't care. The phrase Baird and Colton are asking questions was ringing in my ears. Baird and Colton had been my grandfather's law firm for 50 years. They handled the family trust. They handled my mother's estate. They handled Harlan's will. I dialed the main line, expecting an answering service. A crisp, awake voice answered. Baird and Colton, this is the overnight legal desk. How may I help you? My name is Zuri Powell. I'm Harlan Caldwell's granddaughter. I need to know the status of his will. Ma'am, that's confidential information. We cannot give that out over the phone. I am listed on all his prior documents, I said, my voice sharp, cold, and leaving no room for argument. I have his medical power of attorney, or at least, I used to. I need to know, has anything changed? The man was silent. I heard the soft, rapid tapping of keys. I am not authorized to discuss details, Ms. Powell, but the system does show a recent update to Mr. Caldwell's file. It was filed just last week. Last week? The day after the specialist surgery money. The day before the handle the file before the girl smells it text. Who filed it? I demanded. It appears it was brought in by his primary guardian, Ms. Vivian Caldwell. Primary guardian. The words hit me like a physical blow. When had that happened? How? I need a meeting, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. First thing in the morning. Ms. Powell, the partners are booked solid tomorrow. I am coming in at 9 a.m., I interrupted. I will be bringing documentation regarding fraudulent activity at Pinecrest Haven and potential elder exploitation involving a fiduciary of your firm. I assure you, they will want to see me. The typing stopped. I will clear the schedule. 9 a.m. We will see you then. Ms. Powell. I hung up. 9 a.m. That was the legal front, but the missed call. My grandfather's voice in my head. The one I hadn't heard. They had stolen nearly $40,000. They had turned my entire family against me. They had bribed a facility director. And now, they had changed his will while holding him captive. The lawyer could wait. I looked at the clock. 12:30 a.m. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed my coat. I walked out of my apartment, the small, cold USB stick heavy in my pocket. I was not waiting until morning. I was not waiting for the nurse's permission. I was driving to Pinecrest Haven. Right now, I was going to see my grandfather. Pinecrest Haven at 1 a.m. was a special kind of hell. It was not a place of rest. It was a fortress of fluorescent light. The air was a sterile, chemical cocktail of ammonia, industrial bleach, and the faint, sad smell of overcooked peas. It was the scent of manufactured silence. The main doors were locked. I pressed the intercom. A woman's voice, sharp with suspicion, crackled through the speaker. Pinecrest Haven. Visiting hours are over. You were told this. It was the same night supervisor. This is Zuri Powell again. I'm Harlan Caldwell's granddaughter. I need a visual wellness check on my grandfather. Now. Ma'am, as I said, he is in his room. He is fine. You cannot. If you do not open this door, I will call the police and report a potential hostage situation involving an at-risk elder. I said. My voice was calm. It was not a request. I am not leaving. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Then, a sharp, angry buzz. The magnetic lock on the door clicked open. I walked into a lobby that felt like a trap. It was too bright. The white laminate desk gleaming under the lights. The night supervisor. A woman with a badge that read Martha was already on the phone. Her hand was cupped over the receiver, her back to me, but I could hear the panicked edge of her whispers. She was calling him. She hung up and faced me, her expression a mask of professional hostility. He is fine, Ms. Powell. You are creating a disturbance. Then get your director, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty space. Get Director Ames. Director Ames is not on duty at, she glanced at the clock, 1:15 in the morning. He is now, a deep voice cut through the air. A man emerged from the administrative hallway. He was exactly as I had pictured him from the email chains. He was wearing an impeccably tailored suit, a strange choice for the middle of the night. He had a tan that was too dark for an Asheville winter and a smile that was all teeth. This was the man I was paying to destroy my family. Ms. Powell, he said, walking toward me, his hand extended. This is a highly irregular and, frankly, inappropriate disturbance. I did not take his hand. I am here to see my grandfather, Harlan Caldwell. Director Ames's smile did not falter. It just became colder. Ah, I'm afraid that is simply not possible. And why is that? We have very strict directives from Mr. Caldwell's primary guardian. He said the word guardian as if it were a weapon, and it was. Ms. Vivian Caldwell has filed formal paperwork indicating that your unscheduled visits cause Mr. Caldwell significant emotional distress. Therefore, for his own safety and comfort, all access must be pre-approved and supervised directly by her. The phrases were sterile, legal, and clearly rehearsed. Emotional distress. The exact words from their text messages. This man, standing in front of me, was a co-conspirator. I have held my grandfather's medical power of attorney for 10 years, I said, my voice dangerously level. Yes, so we were told, Ames said, a flash of triumph in his eyes. Which is why we were so grateful to receive the updated directive, filed last week by Ms. Caldwell, which supersedes your previous documents. She now holds sole medical and financial authority. We are legally bound to follow her instructions. I'm sure you understand. Last week, the timeline snapped into place, the money for the specialist surgery, the bribe, the handle the file text, and the update to the will. It was all one clean criminal operation. And just as the full weight of that hit me, a phone flash went off from the corner of the lobby. I turned. Sienna. She was standing by a wilting rubber plant, her phone held high, recording. She was wearing silk pajamas and a full face of makeup. Vivian must have called her. They had set this up. Oh my God! Sienna's voice was a practiced, shaky whisper, aimed directly at her phone's microphone. You guys, I cannot believe she's doing this. We begged her to give him peace. It's the middle of the night. She is literally here, harassing the staff, trying to get to Grandpa. She's just so toxic. She was live streaming. The humiliation was a physical, the hot flush that climbed my neck. This was their optics. This was the public narrative. Zuri, the unhinged, toxic sister, harassing a poor old man and the dedicated staff protecting him. They were creating the evidence to support their lies. Ames crossed his arms, a smug, patient look on his face. He was waiting for me to scream. He was waiting for me to cry, to prove them right. I took one, very slow, very deep breath. I turned my back to Sienna, Dismissing her entirely, I faced Director Ames. "Director," I said, my voice dropping into the icy, professional tone I used for failing contractors. "Is it standard Pinecrest policy to allow non-staff members to film inside a secure medical facility after midnight, potentially violating the privacy of other residents?" Ames's smile tightened at the corners. He hadn't expected that. "Or," I continued, "is that a special privilege you reserve only for Ms. Sienna Caldwell? I'm sure your board of directors and HIPAA would be very interested in that distinction." He shot a venomous look at Sienna. "Sienna, that is enough. Put the phone down." "But Mom said to document everything," she whined. "Now," Ames snapped. Sienna huffed, but the phone went down, though I knew it was still recording from her hip. I refocused on Ames. "I am being denied access to a resident. I understand your stated position, which is based on fraudulent documents you helped create." "That is a slanderous and dangerous accusation, Ms. Powell." "It is," I agreed, "and I will be proving it. But for now, I require a formal, written refusal of access. It must be on Pinecrest Haven letterhead. It must state the time, 1:17 a.m. It must state the date, and it must state the specific legal reason for the denial. Referencing the exact guardian directive you are citing, I will wait." I crossed my arms. The project manager was back. If they were going to build a wall, I was going to document every single brick. The fake charm evaporated from Ames's face, leaving something reptilian and cold. "You will get nothing of the sort," he said. "You will leave these premises immediately, or I will have you removed for trespassing." "So you are officially refusing to provide a written record of your denial?" I asked, my voice projecting clearly toward the ceiling-mounted security camera. "Martha, call security," he said, turning his back on me. I knew I had lost this round, but I had confirmed the enemy's position. I turned to walk away. As I passed the brightly lit reception desk, another nurse had joined Martha. She was younger, perhaps in her mid-20s, with intelligent, tired eyes. Her badge read, "Jolene Park, RN." She was focused intensely on a chart, her black hair falling forward. As I drew level with the desk, she spoke without looking up, her voice so low it was just a vibration in the air. "He asks for you," she whispered. "Every single day. 'Where's Zuri?' he asks." My heart, which had been a cold stone of rage, suddenly cracked. I paused, but I did not turn to look at her. "Is he okay?" I whispered back. "He's strong," she murmured, still writing. "But he's lonely. They took his personal phone. They're isolating him. It's wrong." My hand fumbled in my purse. I pulled out my Rook Haven business card and a small pen. I grabbed a deposit slip from the counter tray and flipped it over. "Grandpa, I am trying. They won't let me see you. Do not believe them. I love you. I will fix this. Zuri." I slid the note onto the counter, just out of Martha's line of sight. "Can you—" "I can't," Jolene whispered. "Ames has them searching his room after any staff interaction. They're looking for contraband, for messages." My hand closed on the note. I pulled it back. Instead, I slid only my business card across the laminate. "For you," I whispered, "if you see anything." Jolene's eyes finally flicked up and met mine. In them, I saw a mirror of my own anger, trapped behind a wall of professional necessity and fear. She gave a single, sharp nod, and the card vanished into her pocket. "Are you leaving or not, Zuri?" Sienna's voice called from the doorway, sharp and victorious. "Are you done harassing the nurses?" I walked out of the building, the automatic doors hissing shut behind me. The cold night air felt clean. I got back to my apartment at 2:30 a.m. My 9 a.m. meeting with Baird and Colton felt like a lifetime away. I was humiliated, exhausted, and vibrating with an anger so profound it was almost silent. I had the financial spreadsheet, I had the text messages, I had the illegal denial of access, but it was all circumstantial. It was my word against a notarized legal document. I was still missing the final, critical piece of the puzzle. I sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor lighting my face. I opened my email, expecting nothing but the deluge of hate mail from Sienna's live stream. It was there, a flood of vitriol from cousins and aunts. I ignored it. And then I saw it. A new message from an encrypted, anonymous Proton Mail account. The subject line was empty. The body of the email contained only 2 words. He's strong. Jolene. Attached was a single video file. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely click the mouse. I downloaded it. I hit play. The image was grainy, black and white, shot from a high-security camera angle. The timestamp in the corner read, 14:32, last Tuesday. The exact day the will was updated at the lawyer's office. The location was a conference room inside Pinecrest. The video showed Director Ames. It showed Vivian, looking impatient. It showed Sienna, tapping on her phone. And it showed a nervous-looking man in a cheap suit, carrying a notary's briefcase. My grandfather was nowhere to be seen. I heard Ames's voice, muffled but clear. He's in radiology for another 45 minutes. We have to do this now. They all sat at the table. Vivian spoke. He was asking too many questions this morning. He wanted to call Zuri. We could not risk him refusing to sign in front of the notary. So we proceed as planned, Ames said. You have the signature samples? Vivian slid a stack of old Christmas cards across the table. His signature is on all of them. The notary licked his lips. This is highly irregular. I'm attesting that he signed this in my presence. You are attesting to what you are paid to attest to, Ames cut in, his voice like ice. Vivian will handle the signature. You are here to stamp it. That is all. My breath locked in my chest. I watched, horrified, as Vivian took the new will. She took a hard plastic placemat and slid it under the signature page. Then she took one of the old Christmas cards and slid it under the placemat, positioning it carefully. She was not copying the signature. She was tracing it. I watched her hand move with a slow, unnatural, deliberate pressure, pressing so hard that the pen would leave an indentation, forcing the signature onto the page below. It was a grotesque, meticulous forgery. She finished and blew on the ink. There, she said, sliding the document to the notary. Your turn. The man, visibly sweating, pulled out his stamp, pressed it onto the page, and signed his name. Sienna actually clapped her hands. Phase 2 complete. When do we get to sell the lake house? Patience, Vivian snapped. We let this settle, then we deal with Harlan. The video ended. I sat in the dark. I did not move for a full minute. I had them. I had the entire conspiracy, from theft to forgery, on video. I picked up my phone. I canceled the 9 a.m. meeting with Baird and Colton. They were compromised. I opened my browser and searched for the best forensic document examiner in the state. Dr. Lionel Voss, Voss Forensics. I called the number. A sleepy voice answered. Voss? Doctor? I said, my voice perfectly steady. My name is Zuri Powell. I have high-definition video of a multi-million-dollar will being forged. I need a certified expert opinion on the line quality, indentation damage, and hesitation marks consistent with a hard line trace. How soon can you see me? There was a long silence. That is quite the claim. I have an opening at noon. I'll be there, I said. I will need a full, sworn affidavit by 3 p.m. That's an extreme rush. It will be expensive. The price is not an object, I said, looking at the spreadsheet total. $39,800. I am paying with their money. I hung up. I wrote one more email. To Jolene's encrypted address. Subject, thank you. Body, you are a hero. What do you need? The reply came back in less than a minute. I'm drowning in student debt. I want to be a nurse practitioner, but I can't afford the certification. I hate men like Ames who treat people like assets. I typed my reply. I am starting a scholarship fund, the Cedar Line Foundation, for nursing education and elder care reform. Consider your entire education fully funded. In return, I need one more thing. A sworn legal affidavit testifying to everything you've seen. The isolation, the missed phone calls, the private meetings. Will you do it? Her reply was 2 words. I will. Sleep was not a reset. It was a tactical pause. I woke up at 6 a.m. after 90 minutes of strained, dreamless oblivion. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a low-frequency hum of pure, concentrated purpose. I showered, dressed in my sharpest work attire, black slacks, a silk shell, a structured blazer. This was not a day for grief. This was a day for project management. My first act was to rename the spreadsheet. Caldwell Cash Flow was too sterile. I retitled the master file, Project Vindicate. I opened a new tab within the file. I called it Master Timeline. This was my specialty. At Rookhaven, I could take 1,000 disparate data points from architects, engineers, clients, and suppliers and weave them into a single, cohesive timeline that showed every dependency, every risk, and every critical path item. I was about to apply that same dispassionate skill to the destruction of my family. Column A, date. Column B, Zuri Powell, wire transfer, amount. Column C, Vivian Caldwell, stated reason for request. Column D, Sienna Vivian, social media, private chat activity. Column E, Pinecrest Haven, transaction, communication, action. I populated the spreadsheet. The process was hypnotic. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Date, October 10th. Column B, $3,000. Column C, emergency property tax lien. Column D, Sienna, Instagram. Treated myself. New leather jacket, tagged at luxury retailer. Column E, blank, date, November 2nd. Column B, $5,000. Column C, emergency roof repair. Cedar Line House. Column D, Sienna, private message to Vivian. He's the best. Took me shopping. Celine bag photo. Column E, blank, date, November 14th. Column B, $2,000. Column C, HVAC failure at Asheville House. Column D, Sienna, Instagram. Spa day at the Grove Park Inn. Column E, blank. It went on like this for months. A simple, clean, one-way flow of my money funding their lifestyle. Then, the pattern changed. Date, February 4th. Column B, $15,000. Column C, Harlan, emergency specialist surgery, non-covered. Column D, Vivian message. Patience, we let this settle. Column E, Director Ames email. Donation processed. We will proceed. Date, February 5th. Column B, blank. Column C, blank. Column D, blank. Column E, Pinecrest Haven, conference room video, forgery of will. Date, February 6th. Column B, blank. Column C, blank. Column D, blank. Column E, Baird and Colton. Updated will filed by V. Caldwell. I stared at the screen. The pattern was no longer simple theft. It was a structured, 3-step corporate crime. 1. My money funded their lifestyle. 2. My money, disguised as donations, became bribes for Director Ames. 3. Those bribes were used to isolate my grandfather so they could steal his entire estate. I was funding the infrastructure of my own removal. I was paying for the pen they used to forge his name. I was paying for the nurse who refused my call. I saved the file. I looked at the clock. 11:30 a.m. Time to see the expert. Dr. Lionel Voss's office was in a boring brick building, all beige carpets and faded prints of university buildings. He was a small, fussy man in a bow tie, with eyes magnified by thick glasses. He looked like a professor, not a detective. Ms. Powell, he said, gesturing to a chair. You have brought me a video. And the original signature samples. Doctor, I said, handing him a file. It contained 3 decades of my life in greeting cards. Birthday cards from when I was 10, his signature clear, his graduation letter to me, signed with a flourish, his Christmas card from 2 years ago. He took the file and the USB stick. He did not ask me about my family. He did not ask me why. He just went to his light table and his high-resolution monitor. For 20 minutes, he was silent. He switched between the video of Vivian's hand, frozen in mid-trace, and the scans of Harlan's real signature. He magnified them until they were just abstract lines of ink. Finally, he turned to me. "This is not a forgery, Ms. Powell," he said. My blood turned to ice. "What?" "A forgery is a freehand imitation of a signature. The forger attempts to mimic the speed and flow. This," he tapped the screen showing Vivian's hand, "is a simulation. Specifically, a trace. It is fundamentally different." He pulled up 2 images, side by side. One was Harlan's real signature from the Christmas card. The other was a still from the video. "Look here," he said, pointing with a laser. "The terminal stroke on the L in Caldwell. In every genuine signature you provided, your grandfather's stroke moves upward, a sign of speed and confidence. Here," he pointed to the forgery. "The stroke moves down, indicative of the pen stopping, lifting, and restarting. It's a sign of profound hesitation." He changed the image. "Now, look at the pressure. The ink spread in the genuine H is wide and consistent, but in the simulation, the pressure is unnatural. She is digging the pen into the paper, trying to follow a line she can only feel. It's dead. It has no rhythm, no life." He walked back to his desk and pulled a single sheet of paper from his printer. "But most damning," he said, "is the placemat. By tracing over a hard edge, she created microscopic damage to the paper fibers. The indentation is there, but it's clumsy. The video is clear. She is not writing. She is drawing." He handed me the paper. It was his affidavit. "I have examined the video evidence and the supplied genuine exemplars," I read aloud. "It is my expert opinion, to a very high degree of probability, that the signature on the document in the video is a simulated trace, executed by the woman identified as Vivian Caldwell." He had signed it, Dr. Lionel Voss. "Thank you, doctor," I said. My voice was thick. "They are never as smart as they think they are," he said, adjusting his bow tie. "That will be $4,000. I wrote him a check without flinching. I did not go to Baird and Colton. They were either complicit or incompetent. I went to the sharpest litigation attorney my boss at Rook Haven had ever complained about. Nadia Rowe. Her office was the opposite of Voss's. It was all glass, steel, and abstract art. She wore a severe black dress and looked at me as if I were a puzzle she was enjoying solving. I laid it all out: the timeline, the bank transfers, the social media posts, the video, the affidavit from Voss, the affidavit from Jolene Park. I spoke for 30 minutes, uninterrupted. When I was finished, Nadia leaned back in her chair. She did not look shocked. She looked impressed. "Well, Ms. Powell," she said, "you've gift-wrapped their heads for me. They're sloppy. The money laundering alone is federal. The forgery and elder exploitation are state felonies. They are going to prison." "I don't care about prison," I said. "I want my grandfather safe. I want his will restored. I want them away from him." "That we can do," she said. "First, we file for an emergency temporary guardianship and a restraining order. We cite the financial exploitation, the isolation, and the video evidence of the forgery. We freeze all his assets, which will cut off their cash flow immediately." "They'll fight it," I said. "They'll use Sienna's social media. They'll say I'm toxic." "Let them," Nadia smiled, and it was a wolf's smile. "My advice to you is absolute. You are to go dark. You will not respond to a single text, a single email. You will not post on any social media. You will not answer their calls. You will not speak to any family member. They are broadcasting their crimes for the world. You will say nothing. You will let them build my case. From this moment on, I am your only voice." "Done," I said. "I'll file the emergency motions this afternoon. We should have a hearing date from the judge by tomorrow." As I was packing my bag, Nadia said, "This evidence, it's spectacular, but it's digital. It's on a drive." "2 drives," I said, And an encrypted cloud server. Good, she said. But let's make it physical. Put it on a new server. Something obscure. Call it Cold Lake. Create a QR code that links directly to that evidence folder. I saw where she was going. You keep that code on you at all times, she said. In your wallet, taped to your phone. If they confront you, if they corner you, you don't argue. You just give them the truth. You give them the link. It was a brilliant move. A digital grenade. I spent the next hour at a print shop. I created the QR code, a small, black and white square of pure data. It linked to the Cold Lake folder, which contained everything: the video, the timeline, the bank records, the affidavits. I printed it on a small sticker and pressed it into the back of my leather wallet, hidden under the cash slot. I returned to my apartment, the first real silence of the last 48 hours settling on me. My phone was a dark brick on the counter, obeying Nadia's command. Then, at 5 p.m., it rang. It was not a number I knew. It was a blocked, unknown caller. Nadia's voice was in my head. Do not answer, but a cold spike of instinct made me pick it up. Hello? Silence. And then, a sound I thought I would never hear again, a frail, dry cough. Zuri? Honey? Is that you? My legs gave out. I sank onto the kitchen floor. Grandpa? Oh my God. Grandpa, where are you? I'm at the drugstore, down the street from the place. The nurse, Jolene. She let me use the payphone. She said I had 5 minutes. His voice was weak, reedy, full of confusion. They took my phone. Zuri, Vivian took it. She said it was for my safety. She said you were very angry with me. No, I choked out, tears blurring my vision. No, Grandpa, I'm not angry. I love you. They're lying to you. They won't let you in, he whispered, his voice cracking. I ask for you, every day. Ames. That man Ames. He says you're too busy. He says you're toxic. The word, in his mouth, was a physical wound. Listen to me, I said. Scrambling to my laptop, I opened the audio recorder. I hit the red button. That is a lie. Vivian and Ames are lying to you. They are stealing your money. They are... I know, he said, and the strength in his voice surprised me. I know. I'm not stupid. I'm just old. I miss the lake house. Zuri, I want to go home. I miss Cedar Line. I'm getting you out, I said, my voice hardening. I promise you, I am getting you out. You have to. You have to be careful, honey. Vivian, she's not right. She's been meeting with that jeweler, the one your grandmother hated, gifting them things. A jeweler? I tried to remember. Grandpa, I have to go. Jolene's voice, muffled, in the background. I have to go. Zuri, I love you. Keep the house. Keep the house alive. The line went dead. I sat on the floor. The recording saved on my desktop. He knows. Gifting them things. A jeweler. I racked my brain. Then it hit me. A memory from an old Asheville charity gala. Vivian, preening, accepting a thank you gift bag from Pinecrest Haven's table. I had a photo of it somewhere. I found it in my cloud backup, a gala from 3 years ago. Vivian, Ames, and my father, all smiling. On the table, a stack of elegant, silver gift bags. The logo on the bag was distinct. A stylized C made of diamonds. Carrington's fine jewelry, the most expensive jeweler in town. My grandfather's words, gifting them things. Vivian wasn't just a donor to Pinecrest. She was a supplier. She was using my money to buy gifts from Carrington's, then donating those gifts to Pinecrest, likely for Ames to hand out as favors or bonuses. It was another layer of money laundering, another way to tie Ames to her criminal enterprise. I added the photo to the Cold Lake folder. The pieces were clicking into place. The machine was built. Then, as if summoned by the devil himself, my phone buzzed. A text message. From Sienna. Nadia's voice. Do not answer. I opened it. I know what you're doing. I saw your car at that quack Voss's office. You're trying to steal Grandpa's money, and everyone knows it. The whole family sees how toxic you are. You are sick. I started to lock the phone. Another message pinged. I need $1,500. Right now, I'm buying a new vlogging camera so I can record everything and show the world the truth about what an evil bitch you are. It's for my vindication. Send it. I stared at the message, the audacity, the sheer, colossal, unadulterated entitlement. After everything, the theft, the lies, the forgery, the isolation of an old man. She was still asking for money. She was asking me to fund the camera she would use to slander me. My rage was so cold, so perfect. It was almost peaceful. I thought about Nadia's advice. You will say nothing. But this was not a conversation. This was a closing statement. My thumb moved over the keyboard. I typed one word, no. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. The day after I filed the motions with Nadia, the real-world consequences began to rain down. The war had moved from a covert data-gathering operation to a public siege, and I was the one exposed. I was summoned to my boss's office at 10 a.m. David, my boss, was a decent man, but he was a man who ran a high-stakes design lab. He didn't look angry. He looked exhausted, which was worse. Zuri, close the door, he said. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. I sat. The silence in the glass-walled office was thick. Harrison Atherton called me this morning, he began, steepling his fingers. He enjoyed your presentation last week. Thought your sustainable composite plan was brilliant. The but was so loud it was practically vibrating. But, he continued, he is pausing the Atherton coastal contract. My stomach, which had been a cold pit of resolve, clenched. Did he say why? Was it the numbers? No, David said, and he looked genuinely pained. His wife follows Sienna Caldwell on Instagram. I felt the blood drain from my face, the live stream, the harassing the nurses video, the toxic sister narrative. Zuri, David said, leaning forward, I've backed you for 8 years. I know what you're capable of, but the Atherton Group is investing 9 figures. They are pathologically risk-averse. They don't give that kind of money to a project manager who is, and this was his exact phrase, publicly unraveling. I am not unraveling, I said, my voice quiet, but the words felt defensive and weak. I know that, he said. But that's the perception. A public, messy family dispute involving elder care, accusations of harassment. Zuri, they are citing concerns about project stability. They are pulling back until this is resolved. My career, my fortress, the one part of my life that was clean, that was mine, that I had built with my own hands, was now infected. Vivian and Sienna hadn't just stolen my money. They were stealing my professional life, my identity. I walked out of his office in a daze. I sat in my car in the parking garage, not starting the engine. The spreadsheet on my laptop suddenly felt meaningless. I had the how, I had the when, but I had been avoiding the why. Why had I, a competent, intelligent woman, allowed this to happen? Why had I sent nearly $40,000 to people I knew were lying to me? I wasn't stupid. I had seen the red flags. I had felt the sting of their casual cruelty for years. I had known, deep down, that the emergencies were a flimsy pretext. The truth was a cold, sharp stone in my throat. I had paid them because I was terrified of being alone. After my mother died, they were the only family I had. My father was a ghost, a passive participant in his own life. Vivian and Sienna were the gatekeepers to the idea of family. I hadn't been paying for their emergencies. I had been paying for my seat at the Thanksgiving table. I had been paying them to text me on my birthday. I had been paying them for the illusion that I belonged somewhere, that I wasn't just a 34-year-old orphan in a too-clean apartment. I had been funding the entire structure of my own exploitation. I wasn't just their bank. I was their willing participant. My fear of loneliness had been the fuel they ran on. My mind flashed to my real mother. Her hands, always stained with paint or dirt from the garden. She was a structural engineer. She taught me how to read blueprints when I was 12. She taught me how to change a tire. She valued strength, integrity, and the solid weight of things that were real. Vivian valued surfaces, her nails, her hair, the brand of her purse. My mother built things. Vivian consumed them. I realized with a sickening lurch that I had spent the last decade betraying my mother's memory by trying to buy the affection of the shallow, cruel woman who had replaced her. I couldn't breathe. I drove, not to my apartment, but to the only person who had ever understood. My best friend, Ray Donovan, opened her door and didn't even ask. She just looked at my face, grabbed my arm, pulled me inside, and poured me a whiskey. "Okay," she said, sitting across from me. "Tell me everything." I laid it all out. The spreadsheet, the missed call from Harlan, the text messages, the factory reset tablet, the video from Jolene, the affidavit from Dr. Voss, the denial of access at Pinecrest, the phone call with Grandpa. Ray listened, her face growing darker and colder with every new exhibit. When I finished, she was silent for a full minute, just staring at the wall. "They're not just thieves," she said finally. "They're monsters. The forgery video. Zuri, that's prison time." "I know," I said. "But Sienna, she's all over the internet. Her live stream from Pinecrest, her posts calling me toxic. It's working. My boss just put my biggest account on hold. I have to fight back. I have to post the video, the spreadsheet. I have to tell my side." "No," Ray said, her voice sharp. She put her hand over mine on the table. "You absolutely do not. Listen to me. Sienna fights with drama. That's her entire brand. You fight with data. She plays to a crowd of strangers who love a good victim story. You play to an audience of one. The judge. You fight this with files. Zuri, not with feelings. Do not get in the mud with her. You'll just get dirty, and she'll say you started it." Nadia had said the same. "You will go dark." "So what do I do?" I whispered. I'm cracking. Ray, my job." "You hold the line," she said. "You let Nadia do the legal work. And you take out the trash." I didn't understand. "What?" "Your life," she said. "You just realized you were paying for a membership in a club that hates you. So you cancel the membership. You stop paying." The next morning, I was up at 5 a.m. The sky was a bruised, dark purple. I put on my running shoes. I ran. I ran until the cold air burned my lungs and my legs felt like lead. It wasn't for health. It was for discipline. It was to remind my body that I was in control, not the hollow panic in my chest. It was to teach myself how to breathe again when everything was constricting. As I ran, my grandfather's voice from the payphone call echoed in my head. "Keep the house alive." But I remembered an older conversation, one from almost 15 years ago. We were at the lake house, Cedar Line, replacing a rotted section of the porch. I was complaining, sweltering in the summer heat. He had stopped hammering, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and looked at me. "This house isn't just wood and nails. Zuri, it's a living thing. It holds our memories. The house belongs to the one who keeps it alive." I had been keeping them alive. Vivian, Sienna, their lifestyle. I had been feeding the parasites, not the house. I stopped running. I stood on the side of the road, bent over, gasping for air as the sun finally broke the horizon. I knew what I had to do. I went back to my apartment. It was too big, too expensive. It was part of the successful Zuri costume, the one I used to prove to them that I was worthy. I called my bank. I placed an irreversible block on all transfers to Vivian Caldwell, Sienna Caldwell, and my father. I closed the joint emergency savings account I shared with my father, the one I alone had funded. I called my landlord. I gave my 30-day notice. By noon, I had signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment downtown. It was half the size and half the rent. It was clean, Spartan, and it was all I needed. I was surgically removing them from my life, my finances, my future. I had one more transfer to make. I opened a new, private trust account. I deposited $10,000 into it. Then I called Nadia. "I'm starting the Cedarline Foundation," I said. "You're moving assets now." "Zuri? The court just froze Harlan's accounts. This isn't his asset. It's mine," I said. "It's the money I would have sent to Vivian this month. The first scholarship is for Jolene Park, for her nurse practitioner certification. The rest will go to elder care reform and nursing education." Nadia was silent for a beat. "That's a powerful move. Zuri, a seed of good in all this. I need to know something clean is growing while I'm tearing down the rest," I said. The silence, of course, drove Sienna insane. My single word no, and my subsequent blocking of her number had been a declaration of war. She didn't get the $1,500 for her camera, so she started a GoFundMe. The title was a masterpiece of manipulative genius. "Help me expose my abusive sister and save Grandpa." The post was a video of her, mascara running, tears streaming down her face. "My toxic, abusive sister Zuri has cut our family off," she sobbed into the camera. "She's trying to steal our grandfather's money, and she's cut me off, her only sister, for trying to stop her. I just want to afford the tools to show the world the truth. Please help me." It was disgusting. It was slanderous. And it was working. The donations poured in. Sympathetic strangers, enraged by her story. She raised over $5,000 in 48 hours. Her follower count exploded. She was a professional victim, and business was booming. Ray and Nadia had been right. I didn't engage. I didn't respond. I just took a screenshot of the video. I screenshotted the campaign. I screenshotted the dollar amount. I screenshotted the hundreds of comments calling me a monster, a thief, an abuser. I saved them all to a new file. I emailed it to Nadia. Subject: defamation evidence. Add it to the suit. A few days later, I was packing boxes in my living room when my buzzer rang. It was the mail carrier, with a package. "This needs a signature, ma'am." I signed for it. It was a simple, brown padded envelope, no return address. I took it inside, my heart hammering. It wasn't from Amazon. I slit the tape. Inside, there was no note. There was only one item, an old-school microcassette tape. I stared at it. I didn't own a player. I had to order one for 1-hour delivery from an electronics store. It was the longest hour of my life. When it arrived, I plugged it in, inserted the tape, and pressed play. The sound was terrible, a low analog hum, static, and then voices, muffled, but clear. Voice 1, a man I didn't recognize. "But the old man is becoming difficult. He's still sharp. He'll never sign it." And then, Director Ames's voice, cold, clear, and unmistakable. "He doesn't have to. We just need the signature while he's absent. We'll schedule him for a full-body PET scan. That gives us a 90-minute window. Vivian will handle the paperwork with her notary. You just make sure his personal nurse is at lunch." Voice 1. "This is a big risk. Ames. The reward is bigger. The Caldwell estate is worth 8 figures. Vivian gets the keys, and we get our new therapy wing. Just get it done." The tape clicked off. I sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes. Jolene's video had shown me the act of the forgery. This tape. This was the intent. This was the conspiracy, recorded before the crime was even committed. Who had sent it? Another nurse? A staff member Ames had crossed? A Pinecrest executive who wanted Ames gone? It didn't matter. It was the final, devastating piece. I had the why, the how, and now, the before. I had them. I had them all. The invitation arrived on a thick, cream-colored cardstock that felt absurdly heavy in my hand. It was from Baird & Colton, my grandfather's 50-year law firm. It was not a request. It was a summons to a family trust and estate review, called by the sole fiduciary and guardian, Ms. Vivian Caldwell. She was forcing a public coronation. Sienna, naturally, provided the pre-game commentary. She posted a glowing, teary-eyed selfie, her ring light catching the moisture on her cheeks. Going live tomorrow at 10 a.m. From the law offices, she announced to her tens of thousands of followers. We are finally gathering to honor my grandfather's true wishes. It's going to be a hard day, but I'm going to share our truth and finally expose the toxic people who tried to tear our family apart. Please send strength. Truth wins family. First. She was, quite literally, selling tickets to her own execution. Nadia and I arrived at Baird and Colton at 9 a.m., an hour early. We weren't assigned a small office. Vivian had reserved the main boardroom, the one with the 20-foot mahogany table, clearly intending to hold court. She wants an audience, Nadia murmured as we set up our equipment. She's going to get one, I replied. I connected my laptop to the high-definition projector at the head of the table. I checked the audio levels. I opened the Cold Lake folder. Everything was there. Jolene's video, her sworn affidavit, Dr. Voss's forensic report, the timeline spreadsheet, and the digitized, cleaned audio from the microcassette. Nadia stepped into the hallway. I saw her speaking quietly to a man in a nondescript suit who was reading a newspaper in the lobby. He was a judicial officer. He nodded, sipped his coffee, and did not look up. He was waiting for her signal. At 9:30, my phone buzzed. A text from Jolene's encrypted number. Allied Hospital, Radiology, East Wing, 10 minutes. He's being transported. Nadia, I have to go, I said. A last-minute asset retrieval. She nodded, her face grim. Do not be late. The show starts at 10. I ran the 4 blocks to the hospital. I saw the Pinecrest transport van idling by the curb. I slipped in through the automatic doors of the radiology wing. I saw them. Jolene, in her scrubs, pushing my grandfather in a wheelchair. He looked smaller than I remembered, frail, his skin like parchment. Zuri, he whispered, his hand, thin and cold, shooting out to grab mine. His grip was surprisingly strong. Grandpa, I'm here. I'm fighting. Jolene told me, he said. His words rushed and dry. The meeting, Vivian, she's trying to steal the house. I know. I'm stopping her. Today. She doesn't know about the safe, he whispered, pressing something cold and hard into my palm. Your grandmother's, behind the painting of the heron, the lake house, cedar line. I looked down. It was an old-fashioned brass key, heavy and ornate. Keep the house alive, Zuri, he pleaded, his eyes desperate. It's all that's left of her. Get him back on the transport, a voice barked. A Pinecrest orderly I didn't recognize was marching toward us. Jolene wheeled him away. He didn't look back. I stood there, the key heavy in my pocket, feeling like a cold piece of iron against my leg. I walked back into the Baird and Colton boardroom at 9:59 a.m. The room was packed. Vivian was at the head of the table, flanked by Director Ames, who she had apparently brought as her star witness. She was dressed in an expensive dove-gray suit, the picture of quiet, powerful grief. My father sat beside her, looking gray and translucent, a hostage in his own life. Sienna was in the corner, her phone on a tripod, her ring light glowing, her microphone on. We're live. Everyone, she whispered to her phone. Mom looks so strong. The rest of the room was filled with the Caldwell clan. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the jury. They all looked at me as I walked in, their expressions a mix of pity and distaste. I was the poison, the toxic daughter. Nadia and I took our seats at the far end of the table, directly opposite Vivian. Mr. Baird, the firm's senior partner, a man who had known me since I was 5, cleared his throat. He refused to meet my eyes. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice oily. We are here at the request of Ms. Vivian Caldwell, who, as you know, has assumed sole medical and financial guardianship of Harlan for his own protection. He shuffled his papers. We are here to review the updated additions to the Caldwell Family Trust and the final will, as dictated by Harlan and filed last week. He began to read. It was a systematic, brutal assassination. Every trust provision my grandfather had set up for me was dissolved. My name was explicitly removed from all property, The Asheville house, the stocks, the bonds, everything was placed in a new trust, to be managed exclusively by Vivian. Passing to Sienna upon Vivian's death, he saved the lake house for last. The Cedar Line property, Baird read, is to be immediately transferred to Ms. Vivian Caldwell, to do with as she sees fit, with the explicit wish that Zuri Powell not be allowed access, as her presence has been a source of profound emotional distress to the family. A wave of murmurs went through the room. Vivian took out a silk handkerchief and dabbed at her dry eyes. "This is not what we wanted," she whispered, her voice breaking perfectly, loud enough for Sienna's microphone. It broke Harlan's heart, what she became. We are simply honoring his final wishes, protecting his legacy." Director Ames nodded grimly. "Harlan has been in a much better, calmer state since Ms. Powell's visits were restricted. He is finally at peace." Sienna's camera zoomed in on my face, waiting for me to crack. Baird closed the folder. "And that concludes the reading." I stood up. The room went dead silent. "Mr. Baird," I said, my voice echoing in the vast room. "Thank you. Before the family ratifies this change, I have a brief presentation regarding the execution of these documents." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Zuri, this is not the time for your dramatics." "I insist," I said. I hit the power button on the projector. The screen behind Vivian and Ames lit up. Sienna, sensing drama, spun her tripod around to capture me and the screen. "You guys, she's actually trying to contest it. This is so sad." "Vivian claims this is what my grandfather wanted," I said to the room. "She claims he signed this, I hit the spacebar, is how my grandfather signed his will last Tuesday." Jolene's video filled the screen. The boardroom was silent. We all watched. We saw Ames. We saw the notary. We saw Vivian, leaning over the document. We saw her meticulously tracing the signature from a Christmas card. We saw Sienna clap. My Aunt Margaret let out a small, strangled gasp. Sienna's face, illuminated by her own ring light, went slack-jawed. That's not real. That's fake. You deep-faked that." "It is not fake," I said. I clicked to the next slide. "This is the sworn, notarized affidavit from Dr. Lionel Voss, a court-certified forensic document examiner. He confirms," and I quote, "The signature is a simulated trace, evidenced by unnatural pen pressure, hesitation marks, and a lifeless, dead rhythm inconsistent with a genuine signature, a forgery." You bitch!" Vivian shrieked, standing up. "How dare you!" "I'm not finished," I said. I clicked again. My spreadsheet filled the screen. The master timeline. "And this is the motive." I pointed to the columns, my voice cold and clear. "Here is my account. Wiring $39,800 over 14 months for emergencies. Here is Sienna's Instagram, showing the spa days, the music festivals, and the Celine bag, purchased on the exact same days." Sienna let out a noise like a dying bird. "And here," I said, my voice dropping, "is the most important column, the donations to Pinecrest Haven. You'll see this $15,000 transfer for a specialist surgery that never happened, and you'll see this email showing that money routed directly into a private donation fund managed by Director Ames. This wasn't a family emergency. This was a financial conspiracy. I paid for this forgery." "This is slander," Ames roared, his face purple. "This is libel. I will have your job." "And finally," I said, "this is the planning." I pressed play on the audio file. The scratchy, tinny sound of the microcassette filled the boardroom. Ames's voice. "The old man is becoming difficult. He's still sharp. He'll never sign it." Ames's voice. "He doesn't have to. We just need the signature while he's absent. Vivian will handle the paperwork with her notary." Vivian's voice. "He was asking too many questions this morning. He wanted to call Zuri. We could not risk him refusing to sign." The room exploded. My uncle stood up, pointing a shaking finger at Vivian. You did this? While he was alive?" Sienna's live stream was a blur of chaos. She was trying to turn it off, her hands shaking. "It's a lie. Stop recording, it's all lies." Vivian looked around, cornered, her mask of grief replaced by a raw, snarling panic. "She's the toxic one. She drove us to this. She poisoned him against us." Nadia Rose stood up. She held her phone in her hand. "Vivian Caldwell, Sienna Caldwell, and Director Ames." Nadia's voice cut through the noise like a scalpel. "You have all been served." The main door of the boardroom opened. The judicial officer from the lobby stepped in. He was not alone. 2 uniformed officers and a woman in a detective suit followed him. "Director Ames," the detective said, her voice flat. "We have an execute on-site warrant for all data, servers, hard drives, and communication logs at Pinecrest Haven. Effective immediately. Your system is now frozen." The judicial officer handed a thick packet of papers to a sputtering Mr. Baird. "This is a court order freezing all assets of the Caldwell Trust, pending a criminal investigation into fraud, forgery, and financial elder exploitation." The 2 officers approached Vivian and Sienna. "Ma'am, we will need to take your phones, your laptops, and any other communication devices." The boardroom, Vivian's chosen theater for her triumph, had just been legally designated a crime scene. Ames stared at me, his face a mask of pure, white-hot hatred. "My firm, Mr. Baird was stammering. "My firm had no knowledge. Your firm is now under investigation for facilitating gross negligence and enabling fiduciary fraud." "Mr. Baird," Nadia said, snapping her laptop shut, "I suggest you get your own counsel." Vivian and Sienna were backed against the wall, their faces pale. As the officers methodically collected their devices, the live stream was over, the truth was out. I did not wait to see the final, pathetic implosion. I did not stay to watch my aunts and uncles, their faces pale with shock and secondhand guilt. Try to process the evidence. I left Nadia to manage the legal fallout. I left the officers to bag the evidence. I left Vivian and Sienna standing against the mahogany wall, their faces stripped bare of all their practiced victimhood, exposed as common, clumsy criminals. I walked out of the Baird and Colton building, the heavy brass key in my pocket, a solid, cold anchor in the chaos. I got in my car. I did not go to my half-packed apartment. I did not go to my office. I drove. I drove the 45 minutes out of Asheville, leaving the city smog behind, climbing deep into the Blue Ridge, toward the one place that had ever felt clean. I drove to Cedar Line. The lake house was silent. When I opened the door, the air that greeted me was cold and still. It smelled of old wood, dust, the faint, mineral scent of the water, and the dry memory of my grandmother's oil paints. It was the smell of my childhood. Vivian hated this house. She never came here. It held too many memories of my mother, of the wife she had replaced. She wanted to sell it, to liquidate it, because it was the one part of my grandfather's life, of my life, that she could not control or corrupt. It was a fortress of a past she had no part in. Keep the house alive. I walked to my grandfather's study. The afternoon light was slanting across the worn rug. There it was, the large, imposing oil painting of a blue heron standing in the reeds. My grandmother had painted it. I set my briefcase on the floor. My hands were steady. I grasped the heavy, ornate frame and lifted it away from the wall. Behind it, just as he had promised, was a small, black, keyhole-operated safe, embedded in the plaster, no keypad, no biometrics, just a lock, analog, real. I slid the brass key into the hole. It turned with a smooth, oiled, satisfying click that echoed in the silent room. The heavy little door swung open. It was not full of money or jewels. It was full of paper. It was full of the truth. On top was a simple, black moleskin notebook. My grandfather's handwriting. It was a journal. I flipped to the last entry, dated just 2 weeks ago, before they took his phone. Vivian was here again. More papers. I asked her why Zuri hasn't come to see me. She said Zuri was too busy with her new project, that she was more important than her old grandfather now. She said Zuri was angry about money I'd supposedly loaned her, which I never did. It felt wrong in my gut. I asked to call her. Director Ames himself came in and took my personal phone. He said it was for my mental peace. He said Zuri was toxic and distressing me. That is not my Zuri. My Zuri built this house with me. They are lying. I am in a prison here. They are isolating me. I tried to call today. The nurse, Jolene, she is a good girl. She let me use the payphone in the hall. I hope Zuri got the message. I don't know what they are doing. I don't trust the papers they are giving me. I closed my eyes. The words were a physical pain. This was not a diary. It was a hostage statement. I carefully placed it in my briefcase. Beneath it was a small, silver USB stick. I plugged it into my laptop. One video file. I clicked it. The screen filled with sunlight. The date stamp read over a decade ago. It was me. I was 20 years old. My hair in a messy ponytail. Sweat streaming down my face. Wearing an old college t-shirt. I was on the roof of this very porch, holding a nail gun. My grandfather, his hair still thick and dark, was holding the ladder below. I still don't get why we don't just pay someone to do this, my younger voice complained, tinny through the speakers. It's 100 degrees up here. My grandfather's voice, strong and clear, laughed. You pay someone, Zuri. They fix the wood. You fix it yourself. You learn the house. This house isn't just wood and nails. It's a living thing. It holds our memories. The house belongs to the one who keeps it alive. The video ended. He had saved it. He had kept this memory of me, of my work, of my value. He was telling me, from the past, that the house was mine. And then I saw it. The core, a thick blue legal folder. I pulled it out. Last Will and Testament of Harlan Caldwell. I opened it. My hands were shaking now. It was dated 4 years ago. It was simple. It was clean. It was everything. It left the Asheville house, the one Vivian and my father lived in, to my father for the duration of his life. It left a small, heavily structured stipend for Sienna, explicitly designated for education or vocational training, and the rest, the entire controlling interest in the Caldwell Trust, the stock portfolio, the assets, and the property known as Cedar Line, and all its contents, free and clear, were left to me. It also established the Alara Caldwell Foundation, in my grandmother's name, to create a scholarship fund for women in structural engineering. This was his real wish. Attached to it with a heavy steel paperclip was the original, notarized, durable power of attorney. It named me, Zuri Powell, as his sole agent for all medical and financial decisions. It had been filed with the county. It was a valid, existing legal instrument. The document Vivian had filed, the one she had forged, was not just a forgery. It was an attempt to supersede a perfectly legal, active document. This was the masterstroke. Tucked at the very bottom of the safe was a thin, plain manila envelope. Inside were 2 carbon copy receipts. One was a copy of a check from Vivian's private bank account, paid to Asheville Temp Solutions. The amount, $500. The memo line, consulting services. The second was the corresponding invoice from the temp agency to Vivian, for one Robert Paxton, the name of the sweaty, nervous man from Jolene's video. She hadn't just paid off a corrupt notary. She had hired a temp worker to pose as a notary. The entire notarization, the stamp, the signature, was a complete fabrication. She had kept the receipts, probably to write them off as a business expense for her consulting firm. The arrogance, the sheer, breathtaking stupidity made my head spin. I didn't put anything back. I packed the journal, the USB, the original will, the power of attorney, and the temp agency receipts into my briefcase. I walked out onto the porch, the cold lake air hitting my face. I called Nadia. Zuri, are you okay? The boardroom is a crime scene. Baird is having a full-blown meltdown. I'm better than okay, Nadia, I said. I'm at Cedar Line. I just opened his safe. And? I have the Holy Grail. I have the original, valid will from 4 years ago. naming me primary beneficiary and establishing my grandmother's foundation. I have the original, valid power of attorney, which was never revoked. I have his private journal documenting his isolation, Vivian's lies, and Ames's complicity, and Nadia. What? Tell me. I have the receipt. Vivian paid a Tempe agency $500 for the man who posed as the notary. I have his name. I have the invoice. She didn't just forge the will. She faked the entire legal ceremony. Nadia was silent for a beat. I could hear her smile through the phone. My God. Zuri, you just handed me their heads. That's not just fraud. That's criminal conspiracy. Wire fraud. Identity theft. That is non-negotiable. Straight to jail time. Get that briefcase to my office. Now. What's happening with Grandpa? I asked, walking to my car. He's safe. The second the judge saw the video, he signed the emergency protection order. He's been removed from Pinecrest. He's at an undisclosed, secure facility. As of this morning, he's a material witness under state protection. Good, I breathed. What about the press? Sienna's live stream is a predictable mess. The Asheville Citizen-Times is blowing up my phone. Scandal at Pinecrest. Prominent family in elder fraud case. This is exactly what we didn't want. I am managing it. But Zuri, you must remain silent. Your only comment is, no comment. Let them print Sienna's unhinged rants. It will only make our defamation case stronger. As if summoned by the devil. My phone lit up. A new notification from Instagram. Sienna. I had unblocked her. Just to watch the fallout. The boardroom video must have cut off. Because she had just posted a new one. It was a staggering act of desperation. Her GoFundMe was gone. Her follower count was plummeting. The new video was shaky, handheld. She was back in her bedroom, her face blotchy and red, her hair a mess. The ring light was off. She set us up, she sobbed into the camera. You guys. Z. She couldn't even say my name. She faked all that. She hired actors. She's abusing my grandfather. She moved him. We don't know where he is. She kidnapped our grandfather. She held up a framed photo of herself and Harlan, smiling on the porch. She's trying to get his money. She's been abusing him for years, and my mom just tried to protect him. And now Zuri has kidnapped him. Please, someone help us. Please, someone find my grandpa. It was the most audacious, incredible lie I had ever witnessed. A complete 180-degree reversal of reality. I didn't even sigh. I downloaded the video. I sent the file to Nadia. Me. Add this to the pile. Nadia. Already done. The defamation suit is filed. Her video just added another 0 to the damages. I'm also filing for an emergency gag order. She won't be able to say your name, her name, or Harlan's name in public until the trial. My phone rang again. It was Nadia. You won't believe this, she said. Try me. The House of Cards at Pinecrest is in freefall. The board just placed Director Ames on indefinite, unpaid leave, pending the criminal investigation. They also suspended Martha, the night supervisor, and the orderly who tried to stop you from seeing Harlan. Good. It gets better. One of the other administrative staff, a man in the billing department who Ames apparently bullied for years, just reached out to my office. He's cooperating. He wants to be a witness. What did he say? He said he was in the internal meeting when Ames proposed the new therapy wing. He said Ames told the board he had a committed donor, Vivian, who was willing to fund the entire $500,000 wing, but the donation was contingent on Vivian having full, unimpeded control over Harlan Caldwell's file, and the signing process being smooth and immediate. He has the meeting minutes. Zuri. He has the proof of the quid pro quo. It's over. I hung up. I stood by my car, the key to the safe in one hand, the briefcase full of truth in the other. I looked at the lake house, my grandmother's house, my house. Sienna was online, crying about a kidnapping. Vivian was probably screaming at my father, her assets frozen. Ames was packing his desk, and I was standing here, in the cold, clean air, holding the truth. The house was alive, and I was the one keeping it. The email from Vivian was an act of breathtaking audacity. It arrived 2 days after the boardroom implosion, 2 days after her assets were frozen and her name was splashed across the Asheville Citizen-Times as the subject of a criminal fraud investigation. She was not contrite. She was defiant. Subject: A time for family healing. My dearest family. The email began. There has been so much pain, so much confusion, and so many terrible, false accusations. My heart is broken by this division. We are Caldwells. We do not settle these things with police and slander. We settle them as a family. I am inviting you all to a family healing and reconciliation retreat. This Sunday, 2 p.m., at the Cedar Line Lake House. It is time for the truth to be spoken in love, and for this painful chapter to end. It was a trap, a desperate, final pivot. She had lost the legal battle, so she was moving the war to a social front. She intended to use the lake house, my house, as a stage for a public opinion trial. She thought she could use decades of family guilt, obligation, and her practiced victimhood to isolate me one last time. Nadia called me. "You are not, under any circumstances, going to this," she said. "I am," I replied, my voice calm. "She's opened the door. I'm going to close it, but this won't be her theater. It will be mine." I replied to the email chain, which included every aunt, uncle, and cousin in the Caldwell line. "I will be there," I wrote. "Cedar Lane is the perfect place to present the final, unedited truth. See you Sunday." I spent the next 48 hours preparing the battlefield. I did not go alone. I hired a 3-person audio-visual team. When the family arrived, the living room at Cedar Line did not look like a cozy retreat. It looked like a deposition. A massive 80-inch television screen was mounted on the main wall. 3 professional video cameras were placed on tripods in the corners of the room. A single, standing microphone was placed in the center. And on every single chair, I had placed a sealed 9x12 manila envelope. The family entered, and the atmosphere was thick with dread. They were a jury, and they knew it. My father, gray and shrunken, slunk into a corner. The aunts and uncles clustered on the far side of the room, a herd of nervous animals. They looked at the cameras, then at me, then at the envelopes. "What is all this? Zuri?" my Aunt Margaret whispered, her hand hovering over the envelope on her chair. "It's called transparency," I said. "No more whispers. No more, he said, she said, everything is on the record." Then, Vivian and Sienna arrived. Sienna, in an act of staggering self-delusion, had not been humbled. She was furious. The gag order had only silenced her public posts, not her private venom. She marched in as if she owned the place, followed by a man carrying a professional tripod, a high-definition vlogging camera, a ring light, and a boom microphone. "You can't film in here without my permission," she announced, glaring at my AV team. "I am the only one press-credentialed. This is my property, Sienna," I said. "Your crew can wait on the porch, but you're the guest of honor. Please, sit." Sienna, incensed, set up her own camera in the back, aiming it at me. She still believed this was her show. Vivian entered last. Her assets were frozen, so the expensive suit was gone, replaced by an older, more relatable sweater. She was not aiming for power. She was aiming for sympathy. "Zuri," she said, her voice trembling. All these cameras, this isn't healing. This is an interrogation. This is an attack." "It's a presentation," I said. "Please, begin. You called the meeting." This was her stage. She took the center microphone, her hands shaking with a performance of righteous anger. "Family," she began, her voice cracking. "I am so glad you are here. You are here to see the truth. You are here to see what this girl has done." She pointed at me. "She is greedy. She has always been greedy. She saw her grandfather, a kind, gentle old man, and saw nothing but dollar signs. She neglected him. She abandoned him. She didn't visit. She didn't call. And when he finally, in his wisdom, decided to protect the real family, me, and her father, and her sister, she could not take it. She fabricated evidence. She hired lawyers and hackers. She faked that horrible video, and she kidnapped him. She has stolen our patriarch. She has him hidden away in some awful place, poisoning him against us, all to get her hands on this house, this money. She is toxic. She is an abuser, and she has broken our family. She was crying now. Real, hot tears of self-pity and rage. The room was heavy with the accusation. Some of my family looked at me with renewed suspicion. Had I gone too far? Had I hidden Harlan? I did not respond to her. I did not defend myself. I walked to my laptop, which was connected to the large screen. Vivian is right about one thing, I said, my voice echoing slightly, amplified by the speakers. This is about my grandfather. She says I neglected him. I'd like to play something for you. I hit play. The screen lit up. It was the USB video from the safe, my 20-year-old self, on the roof with a nail gun. The sun was shining. My younger voice. I still don't get why we don't just pay someone to do this. Grandpa's voice, strong and laughing. You pay someone. Zuri, they fix the wood. You fix it yourself. You learn the house. The house belongs to the one who keeps it alive. The room was silent. I clicked to the next file. It was Harlan's journal entry, scanned and magnified for the screen. I asked her why Zuri hasn't come to see me. She said Zuri was too busy. She said Zuri was angry. It felt wrong in my gut. Director Ames himself came in and took my personal phone. They are lying. I am in a prison here. They are isolating me. She didn't neglect him. Nadia's voice cut through the silence. I turned. Nadia had slipped in the back, standing by the door. She didn't neglect him, Nadia repeated. She was systematically and illegally blocked from seeing him, while he was being emotionally and financially exploited. Lies! All lies! Vivian shrieked. This, I said, my voice cold, is the lie. I pressed play on the audio file from the micro-cassette. The room filled with the tinny, awful sound of the conspiracy. Ames's voice. The old man is becoming difficult. He's still sharp. He'll never sign it. Ames's voice. He doesn't have to. We just need the signature while he's absent. Vivian will handle the paperwork with her notary. My Aunt Margaret put her hand over her mouth. My uncle, who had always been Vivian's staunchest defender, turned a sickly, pale color. And this, I said, is the proof. I clicked to the last slide, a side-by-side comparison from Dr. Voss's report, Harlan's real, fluid signature, and the dead, hesitant, traced forgery from the will. A forensic simulation, I said, executed while my grandfather was in radiology, paid for with my money, which Vivian laundered as donations to Director Ames. I've heard enough, my father whispered. Standing up, he looked at Vivian, his eyes hollow. Vivian, you told me he signed it. You told me he wanted to. He did, she screamed. This is all fake. She created this. She's a monster. Tell them, Sienna, tell them what she is. Sienna fumbled with her camera, her face a mask of panic. She is. She's lying. We loved Grandpa. We were protecting him. Would you like to ask him yourselves? I asked. I clicked one last time. The screen flickered, and then a live video feed filled the room. It was my grandfather. He was not in a secret, awful place. He was in a clean, bright room, sitting in a comfortable armchair. He looked thin, but his eyes were sharp. They were furious. Grandpa! Sienna gasped. Vivian! Harlan's voice was weak, but the microphone made it boom through the room. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was just old. Harlan, thank God. Zuri has kidnapped you. Are you okay? We've been so worried. Vivian started to cry, walking toward the screen. Be quiet, he commanded. The old CEO, the patriarch, The room went dead silent. "You lied to me," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You told me my granddaughter had abandoned me. You locked me in that room. You stole my phone. You tried to steal her house, my wife's house." He looked around the room, his eyes finding each of his siblings, his nieces, his nephews. "I want all of you to hear this. I want you to hear it from me. Zuri did not abandon me. She was the only one who fought for me. She was the only one who saw the truth." He looked straight into the camera. He looked at me. "The house belongs to the one who keeps it alive. And Zuri, you kept it alive. You kept me alive." "But, Harlan, the papers," my father stammered. "They are forgeries," Harlan said. "I never signed them. I never would. The real will is in that envelope in front of you." There was a collective rustle as 20 people tore open their sealed envelopes. Inside was a copy of the original will from the safe, the one that left me Cedar Line, the one that funded my grandmother's foundation. The truth, in print. She told me. My Aunt Margaret spoke, her voice trembling. She was looking at Vivian. I have to say this. We were at lunch, last month. I asked how Harlan was, and she laughed. She said, "I'm finally cutting Zuri out of everything. She won't get a dime." I thought she was joking. I didn't think. "You snake!" Vivian lunged at her. But my uncle held her back. The entire room had turned on her. The public opinion trial was over. She had lost. And then? A sharp knock at the door. Nadia opened it. A uniformed officer stepped inside. He was not the same one from the boardroom. He looked at the chaos. At Sienna. Still filming. Her face a mask of disbelief. At Vivian. Being restrained by her family. He walked directly to Vivian. "Ma'am, I have a warrant for your immediate arrest." "Arrest!" my father shouted. "This isn't about the fraud, sir," the officer said calmly. "This is for contempt of court and witness tampering." He held up a phone. "We've been monitoring your communications since the gag order was issued. You and your daughter have spent the last 48 hours contacting every person in this room, attempting to coordinate your story, slander the primary victim, and tamper with the testimony of material witnesses." He looked at Sienna, who had frozen, her camera still rolling. "That includes," the officer said, "planning this healing retreat specifically to intimidate Ms. Powell and further your false narrative. Your daughter's live stream, which we are also monitoring, confirmed it. You are both in violation. We will also be seizing all active devices," the officer said. The camera fell from Sienna's tripod with a crash. Her sponsors, Nadia told me later, began pulling their contracts within the hour. The live stream had not, in fact, been turned off. Her thousands of followers had just watched her, and her mother, be arrested for tampering with the very case they claimed was a lie. The truth had won. The AV equipment was gone. The family, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my father, had dispersed in a cloud of horrified, ashamed silence. They were not allies. They were not enemies. They were just an audience, heading home after a particularly shocking matinee. I sat alone in the kitchen at Cedar Line. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water in deep, bruised colors of orange and purple. The only sound was the gentle, rhythmic lapping of the waves against the shore. It was the only honest sound I had heard in days. The arrests had been brutal and fast. Vivian and Sienna had been released on bail late last night, their charges of contempt and witness tampering adding to the growing mountain of felonies. The judge had set the final, expedited hearing for tomorrow morning. The battle was over, but the sentencing remained. I had separated the world into two distinct categories. There was family, which I now understood, meant my grandfather, maybe Ray. That was it. And then there was the audience, my father, my aunts, my uncles. They were the people who watched. They watched my mother die. They watched Vivian rise. They watched me pay for their approval. They watched me present evidence. They watched my stepmother get arrested. They were passive spectators in the drama of their own lives. They were not participants. I felt no anger toward them. I felt nothing at all. They were irrelevant. I opened my laptop, but not the Project Vindicate file. I opened a new, blank document. I looked at the cursor, blinking on the white screen. I needed to write it down. Just for myself, to make the boundary permanent. I typed one sentence. I am no longer paying the membership fee for a party I was never invited to. I closed the document. I didn't save it. I didn't need to. I had lived it. My phone, resting on the old wooden kitchen table, buzzed with a text message. It was Nadia. Tomorrow is the big one. The final summary judgment. Vivian and Sienna will be there. Ames will be there. They will be desperate. They will come at you with emotion, with accusations, with anything they have left. Do not engage. Do not respond to their feelings. Respond with the evidence. Let the facts do the talking. Be the project manager. Be the surgeon. Be cold. I typed back. Understood. I was good at being cold. I had been practicing my whole life. A new email popped up. The subject line, "For the sake of peace." It was from Vivian. My fingers tightened on the phone. What possible arrogance could lead her to email me now? I opened it. Zuri, what happened at the lake house was a terrible misundertaking. You and your lawyers have twisted everything. You've turned Harlan against me. You've broken this family. I know you are angry. But this legal path is destroying us all. It is hurting your father. It is destroying Sienna's future. I am willing to put a stop to all of it. For the sake of peace, for your grandmother's memory. We can make this go away. I will agree to drop all my claims if you agree to this one. Simple thing. The Cedar Line Lake House will be split. 50-50. I will take the house. You will take the land. It is the only fair way to end this. So we can all heal. I read it twice. She was still negotiating. She was standing in the smoking crater of her life, covered in the ash of her crimes, and she was still negotiating. She was demanding half of the very thing she had tried to steal, offering peace as if it were a commodity she owned and could trade. I thought about Nadia's text, "Do not respond with emotion." I hit reply. I typed 6 words. "The court will decide tomorrow." I hit send. As if on cue, my Instagram notifications flared up. Sienna. She was out of contempt jail, and the gag order didn't stop her from being pathetic, only from using our names. She had posted what looked like an old faded photograph from a childhood scrapbook. Her, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with a missing front tooth, sitting on my father's lap. The caption was a novel of self-pity. "Some people are just born lucky," she wrote. "Some people get everything. They get the good grades. They get the attention. They get the fancy job. They're the perfect ones. Other people just have to survive. Other people are the leftovers. Other people are just trying to get a little bit of the sunshine the lucky ones are hogging. And when you've been in the shadow your whole life, and you finally ask for your one little piece of warmth, the perfect ones will burn your whole world down just to keep it all for themselves. I just wanted a family. I just wanted to be seen." It was a pivot, a masterpiece of revisionist history. She was no longer the vlogging victim of a toxic abuser. She was the unloved child, the Cosette in the corner, painting me as the spoiled, golden child who had always, unfairly, had more. It was a lie, a smart lie. I could feel the old, acidic sting of my own memories. I could fight this. I could post my own truths. I could tell the world about the private school she demanded. I could tell them about the car I paid for. I could tell them about the years she and Vivian spent together, laughing, a closed, perfect circle of 2. While I sat on the outside, I could use my past as a weapon. But my case was not built on the past. It was not built on "she was mean to me." It was built on forgery. It was built on wire fraud. It was built on a $40,000 spreadsheet and a video of a crime in progress. I would not fight her in the shadows of our childhood. I would beat her in the fluorescent light of a courtroom. I closed the app. I would not reply. I would let her sob story hang in the air, unanswered, irrelevant. My inbox pinged again. This email was not from Vivian. It was from Jolene Park's secure address. Subject: Something for you. Body: He has been watching this on repeat all day. I thought you'd want to see it. Attached was a single image, a photo, taken with a cell phone. It was my grandfather. Harlan, he was in his new room. It was clean, safe, and comfortable. He was sitting in his armchair. He was holding a tablet, and on the screen of the tablet, I could see the image. My 20-year-old self, on the roof of this very house, holding a nail gun. He was watching the video from the safe, and he was smiling. It was not the pained, confused grimace I had seen at Pinecrest. It was not the weak, frail look of the hostage on the payphone. It was a real, true, broad smile. His eyes were crinkled at the corners. He looked happy. He looked like him. I stared at the photo, the project manager, the data analyst, the cold, logical strategist who had run Project Vindicate. She just dissolved. My throat closed. A hot, painful pressure built behind my eyes. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, not when I was fired, not when I was disowned, not when I was slandered on a live stream, not even when I saw the forgery, I put my head down on the old, scarred kitchen table, and I cried. It was not a cry of sadness or anger. It was a cry of profound, agonizing relief. It was the sound of a dam breaking. He was safe. He was himself. He remembered all the data points, all the spreadsheets, all the legal motions. They all resolved into this single, simple image, a man, smiling, because he remembered who he was and who I was. The house belongs to the one who keeps it alive. It took a long time for the tears to stop. When I finally sat up, the sun was gone. The kitchen was dark. I felt scrubbed raw, but I felt light. I washed my face in the cold water from the tap. I had one more piece of business. I logged onto my computer. I opened the email from Nadia's paralegal. The Asheville Citizen-Times had run a front-page story, not on my family's scandal, but on the systemic failures at Pinecrest Haven. It detailed Ames's entire quid pro quo scheme, citing the cooperating witness. It called for widespread reform in elder care, and it mentioned, briefly, an anonymous scholarship fund being established by one of the victims. I pulled up the document, Articles of Incorporation for the Cedar Line Foundation. It was no longer an idea. It was no longer a promise. It was a legal entity. Purpose: to provide educational scholarships for frontline nursing and healthcare staff, and to fund advocacy for elder care reform. The first recipient was already listed: Jolene Park. I typed my name in the digital signature box. I hit submit. It was done. I was turning their poison into a cure. I stood up and walked out onto the dark porch. The air was cold and clean. The lake was a sheet of black glass, reflecting a sky full of sharp, distant stars. I had taken the $40,000 they stole from me and laundered it back into something good. My phone buzzed one last time on the kitchen table. I went inside to check it. It was a missed call. From Harlan's new, secure line. A voicemail notification popped up. I pressed play. His voice, stronger now, filled the kitchen. Zuri, it's me. I've been watching that video. The one of the roof. You were always a hard worker, stubborn, like your grandmother. He paused, and I heard him take a breath. They tell me I have to speak to the judge tomorrow, by video. I'm ready. I have a few things I need to say. Things I should have said a long time ago, about your mother, about Vivian, about what I saw. Another pause. Tomorrow, he said, and his voice was suddenly firm, the voice of the CEO I remembered from my childhood. Tomorrow, I say the rest. The message ended. I turned off the lights. I sat in the dark kitchen, in my grandmother's house. I was ready for tomorrow. The tension at the Cedar Line dining table was so thick, it was suffocating. This was Vivian's final, insane performance. The Thanksgiving Grace dinner. It was the night before the final criminal sentencing, and she had summoned the entire family, those who had not been arrested, those who were not yet facing trial, for a last-ditch appeal to family unity. She was out on bail. and this was her last attempt to control the narrative. My father sat at one end, a gray, silent ghost. My aunts and uncles, looking at their empty plates, were the unwilling audience. And at the head of the table, he sat, Harlan. The judge, seeing the absolute collapse of Vivian's case, had released him from witness protection yesterday. He was assigned his own private, court-ordered security. But he was home. He had insisted on being here. I sat opposite Vivian. Nadia had advised me to come, to show I was not intimidated, to show that this was my house, my table. My phone was on my lap, hidden beneath my napkin. The screen dark. I was recording. I wanted to capture every last lie. Vivian clasped her hands. Her face, which had been a mask of raw fury at the lake house retreat, was now a performance of tragic piety. "Let us bow our heads," she whispered, her voice trembling with false emotion. The room reluctantly complied. "Lord," she began, her eyes squeezed shut, "we ask you to heal this broken family. We ask for forgiveness, for those who have trespassed against us, for those who have been blinded by greed and toxicity." She was still speaking, her voice a velvet river of hypocrisy. Under the table, her hand shot out. It was not a slap. It was a vicious, pinching strike. Her nails dug into the flesh of my wrist as my thumb accidentally brushed the phone, lighting up the screen. "You will not destroy me," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper, her eyes still piously closed. A fork clattered. It was loud, metallic, an explosion in the silence. At the head of the table, Harlan had dropped his fork onto his china plate. His eyes were open. They were fixed on Vivian. "That's enough," he said. His voice was not frail. It was not weak. It was the voice of a CEO. It was the voice that had built an empire. It was steel. The room froze. Vivian's eyes snapped open, her hand recoiling from my wrist as if it had been burned. Her face was a mask of pure white panic. She had been caught. "We are finished with this," Harlan said, pushing his chair back. "I agree," I said. I stood up, my wrist throbbing. I looked at the large television screen on the far wall, dark and silent. "The judge is waiting." I turned to the rest of the family. "We are moving this to the living room. The final hearing is now." It was a courtroom, staged in my living room. Nadia and I sat at one table, Vivian, Sienna, and their exhausted, court-appointed lawyer sat at another. The family, the audience, filled the couches. Now a jury box. The large screen flickered to life. Judge Mariana Reyes appeared, her face grim. "We are on the record," she said, her voice filling the room. "This is the final summary judgment in the matter of the Caldwell estate. We have convened via secure video conference at the request of the primary victim, Mr. Harlan Caldwell, so he may be present in his own home. Ms. Rowe, is the plaintiff ready?" "We are, Your Honor," Nadia said. "Is the defense ready?" Vivian's lawyer just scrubbed his face with his hand. "As ready as we can be, Your Honor." "Then let us begin. Mr. Caldwell, your statement." Harlan, sitting in his armchair, looked directly into the camera I had set up for him. "I am reading this statement to confirm my wishes and my testimony," he said, his voice clear. "My only valid will is the one dated 4 years ago. It leaves the majority of my estate, including this house, to my granddaughter, Zuri Powell. It also establishes a charitable foundation in my late wife's name. That is my will. That is my word. Everything that followed was a lie, perpetrated by Vivian Caldwell." A court officer, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. "Your Honor, the final forensics from the State Crime Lab have been submitted. The signature on the purported updated will is, conclusively, a simulation by trace. Furthermore, our audit of Pinecrest Haven's accounts and Ms. Caldwell's Shell Corporation confirms a quid pro quo. We have traced over $60,000, cycled from Ms. Powell's accounts, through Ms. Caldwell, directly to Director Ames, disguised as donations for a therapy wing that was never budgeted. The screen split. Director Ames appeared, live from a correctional facility's video room. He was in an orange jumpsuit. He was pale. He was broken. "Mr. Ames," the judge said, "you have agreed to testify in exchange for a plea agreement. Please state your involvement." Ames stared at the camera, his voice dead, all the smug superiority gone. "It was a scheme. Vivian Caldwell proposed it. We developed a system to isolate the air. We called it air isolation. We restricted access, confiscated personal phones, and created a false narrative of toxicity and emotional distress to legally justify blocking Miss Powell's visits. This allowed Miss Caldwell time to handle the estate paperwork." "And the will?" the judge asked. "I knew it was a forgery," Ames whispered. "I was paid to know. I was paid to facilitate it." "Liar!" Sienna shrieked. She forgot the judge. She forgot the lawyers. She lunged for the microphone I had placed in the center of the room. "He's lying to save himself. It was all her." She spun, her finger pointing not at me, but at her own mother. "My mother! She told me it was our money. She told me Zuri owed us. She said Grandpa was losing his mind and we had to protect the assets. I just did what she said. I just wanted her to love me." Nadia stood up, calm and cold. "Your Honor, we note Ms. Sienna Caldwell's public confession. We also present the final motion for the associated defamation suit. The damages from her fraudulent GoFundMe campaign and slanderous live streams, which directly impacted Ms. Powell's career, have been calculated at $2.5 million. "Approved," the judge said, her voice flat. "The asset seizure will stand." "You!" Vivian finally moved. She launched herself not at me, but at Sienna. "You did this. You and your stupid, greedy vlogging. Your Celine bag. You couldn't keep your mouth shut. You couldn't stop posting. You ruined us." "I ruined us?" Sienna laughed, a high, hysterical, terrifying sound. "You were paying a temp to fake a notary. Mom, you were the one who got caught on tape. You were always sloppy. You got caught." The alliance didn't just break, it detonated. They were climbing over each other, trying to drown the other to get one last gasp of air. "Silence!" Harlan's voice boomed. The room went dead quiet. Vivian and Sienna froze, their faces streaked with tears and rage. "There is one more thing," Harlan said, his voice quiet. He looked at me, and his eyes were full of a deep, old pain. "Zuri, I must apologize. I knew. I suspected, deep down. I was weak. I let this woman into my home after your mother died. I let her poison my house. I was a coward." He turned his gaze to Vivian. "You thought I was just an old fool, asleep in my chair. But I was a CEO for 40 years. I know how to listen." He held up a small, black digital audio recorder, the one I had given him when he first moved to Pinecrest, the one they had missed. "You and Mr. Ames were so very loud. Vivian, you had your final donation negotiation in the study, right outside my bedroom door. While you thought I was napping, I am a very light sleeper." He pressed play. The room filled with Vivian's voice, crisp and cold. The therapy wing is a lovely cover. "But the price is the will. I need Zuri gone, and I need him isolated." Ames's voice. "The price is $50,000, and my full cooperation. You handle the signature, I'll handle the toxicity paperwork." Harlan clicked the recorder off. "I believe," he said to the judge, "that is the final piece of evidence." Vivian didn't scream. She didn't move. She just collapsed, sinking into the chair, a hollowed-out, empty ruin. She was, finally, done. The judge's face was grim. The judgment of this court is final. The original will, dated 4 years prior, is restored to full and immediate effect. Ms. Zuri Powell is the legal heir and sole executor of the Caldwell estate. Permanent restraining orders are granted against both Vivian and Sienna Caldwell, barring them from any contact with Mr. Harlan Caldwell or Ms. Zuri Powell. This court is recommending the maximum allowable sentence on all state charges of fraud, forgery, and financial elder exploitation, and we are opening a full state-level criminal investigation into the Board of Directors of Pinecrest Haven. This hearing is adjourned. I didn't watch them being led away by the officers. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I just felt quiet. The house was finally clean. Nadia approached me as the screens went dark. "Congratulations, Zuri." "Thank you." "Nadia," I said, "I have one more request. I want you to immediately process the paperwork. Use the restored trust assets to capitalize the Cedarline Foundation. The full amount. I want Jolene Park's tuition paid in full by Monday. And I want the first grant for elder care reform advocacy announced by Friday." Nadia smiled. "I already filed it. It's done." The house was empty again. The audience was gone. It was just me and Harlan. He was standing on the porch, wrapped in a thick blanket, looking out at the lake. The water was dark glass, reflecting a clear, cold sky. I stood beside him. The silence was long, but it was not heavy. It was peaceful. He put his hand on my shoulder. It was frail, but it was steady. "You kept this house alive, Zuri," he said, his voice thick. "Your grandmother, she would be so proud." My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another text from Nadia. It was an email from Harrison Atherton. Subject: Atherton Coastal Project, Powell. "I have been following the news. What you did was remarkable. A masterclass in crisis management and professional integrity. We are back in. The contract is yours, provided you are still interested." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I looked at the email on the screen, the message that would restart my career. I looked at my grandfather, safe. I looked at the house, solid and real beneath my feet. I pressed the button on the side of my phone, silencing the notification. I put it back in my pocket. I wouldn't be answering. Not tonight. I smiled. Not at the email, but at the memory of Vivian's voice, her fake piety, her hollow prayer. We would not be saying grace in this house ever again. We didn't need to pray for a false family. The truth had finally been spoken, right here at the dinner table. And my grandfather's words, "That's enough," were not an ending. They were the beginning of a new and final order. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are listening from. So please comment below and let's share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give that hype button a tap to help this story reach more people who need to hear it.